All right, let's talk about social media for a second. It's been clear for years that it does have a negative impact, especially on youngsters, when it's not used appropriately. Yes, there are apps and there are net nannies and all these very fancy technological systems in place to help you as a parent and as a caregiver, as a teacher, whatever it might be, to monitor and to prohibit what your kids are looking at. But unfortunately, parents at the moment need to be extra vigilant because there's a lot of unfiltered and unmoderated content that is coming out. This has all come to the fore at the moment, especially because of what we're seeing over in the Middle East. Our social media law expert, Emma Sadlier, of course, from the digital law company, joining us this morning. Emma, good to have you back on eNCA. Been a time since you and I have spoken. This isn't so much a legal issue, I think, as more of a moderation issue, because if you're on social media, you're not breaking any laws, you're not filming yourself having sex. Everyone knows your book, of course. This is more about how parents can try and help their children stay away from this. But how do you do that on social media? Morning.
Yeah, good morning, and I'm sorry to be speaking to you under these circumstances. I can tell you that the content that I've been exposed to in the last couple of days has been beyond distressing, beyond traumatic, beyond horrific, from all sides of the war. And I think that what a lot of people are forgetting is that our children have access to that same media content that we do. And there is a legal angle to this, Gareth, because the platforms are not all the same. Some of them have much greater moderation. And as we've seen as a theme, since Elon Musk took over Twitter, now X, he has really erred on the side of not getting too involved. You know, I opened X last night, and the first two posts I saw contained the most graphic footage from Saturday's events. I don't even want to describe them here, never mind show them. But it is an important realization that, you know, what we're seeing on the news media, on television, is traumatic, but it is edited. It is filtered to a certain extent. And what is happening on social media is just completely unfiltered and unmoderated. So I suppose the catalyst for this discussion, Gareth, is that we've seen a lot of schools around the world putting out missives to parents to say, please delete all social media apps from your children's phones, particularly TikTok, because we're anticipating that there will be footage released from hostages begging for their lives. And we want to protect our children from that content as far as possible. Now, what worries me about just deleting content is that there is always another way of getting hold of that content. So you've got to be a little bit careful about making it the forbidden fruit. But I think really just putting it on parents' agenda that our children are seeing this content. And as much as I'm not sleeping at the night at the moment because of the reports and the footage coming out from the conflict, our children have even less capacity to deal with that kind of content than we do.
Yeah, I suppose the issue here, and you raise a good point, in that especially the youngsters these days, you know, if you delete one social media account, they'll find another one. Now you have Threads, then you have TikTok, then you've got something else coming out. I suppose, and I'm not a parent, so believe me, I'm not here sitting giving parent advice, but perhaps a way to handle this, Emma, is to have the conversation, and you've spoken about this before, you and I, have the conversation with the youngsters and explain to them what this is and why they shouldn't be looking at it. Because as we know on social media, the more you look at it, the more you're going to be served up as well. You're going to see more of that content, aren't you? Maybe it's a discussion between parent and kid.
Absolutely. It is the ultimate line of defense against all of the online harms, just not the online harms that we're talking about today, but all online harms. Active, involved, engaged, connected, aware parents. You need to know what your children are up to. You need to be able to have open discussions with your children. I think South Africans are very conservative by nature. I think often when children come to us to say they've seen content, often it's sexualized content, our default position is, oh, well, let's just quickly take the phone away and not engage. We need to stay connected to our children. We need to talk to them about what they're seeing. We need to pre-program ourselves not to overreact. And, you know, I can't come on this morning and give you a blanket approach and say this is what needs to be done with all children. All children are different. The way we're going to treat small children who even have access to this content on platforms like YouTube, to how we're going to treat older teenagers is totally different. There is a huge parental discretion involved in this. But I suppose teaching good digital hygiene, things like detecting misinformation, disinformation. We're seeing it on both sides. Incredible propaganda, trying to detect what is a fake image. It's very difficult these days with AI because the fake images are so perfect.
Yeah.
So it's teaching that cynicism that that not everything you see is real. With the younger children, it's comforting that that we're far away from the conflict, that they're safe. But protecting, once we've seen this content, Gareth, we can't unsee it. You know, the content that I've seen in the last 4 days, I wish I could unsee, but I can't. And I can tell you that I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, absolutely traumatized, and I'm just in a total state about what it is doing to our kids, because I think that we're not having that conversation.
Obviously, I know you're not an IT expert. I mean, you know a lot about it. This is you're a lawyer involved in this, but there could be parents at home going, but isn't there a way for me? I'm paying for the phone, I'm paying for the contract, I'm paying for the Wi-Fi. Why can't I put something on the phone that can block social media? Because a lot of kids these days need it. They need it for school. They need it for homework assignments. They have school WhatsApp groups where they're doing their homework together. The evolution of phones has moved on, Emma. Is there a way, from a technical perspective, that you know of that can actually let a parent switch certain parts of their kids' phones off? Especially, I say, if you're paying for it, you're the boss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially when children are younger. You know, I think as a rule, South Africans are getting phones far too young. If I was the boss of the world, I would make it illegal for children under 13 to have smartphones. And I've been shouting that from the rooftops for years. At some of the schools I'm going to now, Gareth, the parents have got together and they're just like, we're not doing it. So I'm going into schools where I speak to the grade 6s and 7s, where my usual experience is that 95% of them are on every single platform and have their phones with them literally 24 hours a day. And I'm starting to finally see the pendulum swing in the other way, where parents are getting together and saying, we don't have to be on it, that these kids don't have to be on it that young. When your children get older, I'm a big fan of a smartphone contract. There's a free one to download on my website, but the internet is awash with examples, which just lay the ground rules. It's having discussions with your children. It's staying connected to your children. And there are so many brilliant and free parental control apps. The iPhones all come with screen time. The Android devices come with Google Family Link. And those apps are so brilliant. Of course, your children are going to be clever and there are going to be various workarounds. But as a starting point, absolutely excellent that they can't download X unless you give them permission, that they can't spend more than 40 minutes a day on TikTok unless you approve it. So a very good place to start is a website called Protect Young Eyes. It gives you step-by-step instructions on how to set up those parental monitoring controls. Common Sense Media, a lot of viewers will be aware of, also an excellent resource. And Bark, absolutely brilliant. They release these sort of parent ultimate guides to everything: how to set up the Wi-Fi at home, how to set up your child's phone, what the issues are on each of the social media apps, what the issues are on games. But you know, the bottom line is just staying connected to your children as far as possible. And this idea that your child couldn't live a week without social media, you know, as much as I think maybe the idea of just saying you can't be on social media at the moment, there's too much stuff on there. It is a reminder that I think social media should come with proper age gating. There are countries around the world where instead of just giving for example, in Vietnam, they've just created a nationwide law that if you want to start a social media, an account on a social media app, you don't just make up a date for your birthday so that you can pretend to be over 13. You actually have to submit a government-issued ID document. So those kinds of steps, I think we've got to get in that direction and just protect our children, keep them as innocent as possible for as young as possible.
Yep, absolutely. It's a good digital hygiene. I forgot you actually used that turn of phrase. It's a good one. Protect young eyes and common sense is one of the two big ones as well, but I'm sure you can go and Google that. As Emma says, there are lots of options available for you. Social media law expert weighing in on how to protect your youngsters. Emma, good to talk to you. I'm sure we'll talk again in the not too distant future.